What I'd like to do in this lesson is to show you how to draw a portrait. We've been working on contour lines now for some time, and I'd like to put that in practice where we're going to outline the edges and shapes of the face, and then we're going to put it together in a portrait. The portrait that I picked is Mr. King, and I'm going to hand out these face sheets that I've put together. This is using Leonardo da Vinci's proportions of the face, like an eye is 1/5 of the way across, and the eyes are about halfway from the middle of the head to the top, in the middle of the head to the bottom, and show you these different proportions as we set up this face. But what I'm going to do is start drawing a light contour of Mr. King's face, starting with his eyes. So now you can see what I've done here. I've got the face sheet here, and what it says that the eyes are about 1/5 of the way across the head shape. So this is going to be 1/5 here, and then if you notice, in between the eyes there should be a measurement of one eye, and then over to here is another eye, and it's not quite 1/5 of the way to the edge of the head, and it's not quite 1/5 of the way to the edge of the head here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Mr. King, and I'm going to start by setting up his eye, and I want to just show you a close-up of what I'm going to do. Is eye shapes are very important. You've got to look at the eye shape, and you're going to try to draw the way that it's curved. And I'm going to see if I can get it close enough so you can see what's going on. So now as I start to draw the eye, I'm going to take this eye here. If I were to put a line straight across that, you'd see that from the tear duct to the edge of the eye is pretty much a straight line. So here I'm going to have to darken it a little darker than I'd really like, but so that you can see it on the when it's projected here. What happens is I kind of come up and I try to match the shape of the top of the eye and the bottom of the eye. So I'm coming up and I'm coming in like this, and then down underneath. It doesn't go quite down as far. It's going to come across like this. Now let me tell you something about the iris. The iris is round. This is where a lot of artists get caught. They make it squished because it looks like this eye is actually kind of squished, but that eye is actually perfectly round. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what's going to happen here. Is it's going to kind of come down like this, barely touch here, and then come up like this. And if I were to continue that circle, it would be like all the way around like this. Let me see if I can zoom in so you can see what's going on here. Do you see how I kind of drew this here? You don't have to draw this circle all the way around, but I'm just trying to show you what's going on with this eye. So see, this iris is round. What I would do is come back in and erase the parts that really don't show because they're covered by the eyelid. So it's going to be kind of like this. And then there's a muscle that comes up over the top. The eyelid is going to come like this and down like this. And then we've got a little bit of a shadow there. And then there's going to be this pupil in here. It comes around like this. And he's got this white highlight right on the top of his eye. It's going to be like this. So that's going to be there. And then I see this on the bottom of his eye. I see a little eyelid. Now eyelashes, let me tell you this, generally speaking, kind of radiate from the pupil out. So little eyelashes kind of be here, and as they get to the side, this is going to be your point. So the eyelashes will go kind of like this as they're kind of radiating out from the center. Depending on the length of the person's eyelash, if they have a lot of eyelashes, less eyelashes, but they're generally going to radiate from the pupil out. And there's going to be a few little eyelashes on the bottom, and the way to do that is to kind of build it out like this. Now that I have this one eye, I'm going to use this for measurements. Because I look at Mr. King's eyes and I see that his eyes are about one eye apart. So I'm going to measure from here, the tear duct, over to the edge of the eye, and take my pencil to measure and say, okay, so there's the point right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the picture over and measure again. So it's going to be from here to here. It's going to be about right to there. And if I take and just use a straight edge to make sure that, generally speaking, your eyes kind of line up straight across. So the tear duct will be right here, the edge of the eye will be here. Now some people's eyes actually do slant a little bit, like they're going to have a point up here and a point up here. Try to match them though so that the tear ducts are straight across from each other. And then over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drawing the eye coming this way. And again, look at the shape of the eyelid. If it's got any special muscle curves or special shapes to it, try to get those in there. This comes across to here. I'm going to stick his glasses in next. And I just want to see what the measurement, if I look at Mr. King's glasses, what happened is I look at his eye and see, okay, here's the measurement of his eye. From tear duct to the edge, it's going to be like that big. Let's just see how big his glasses are. It's 1, 2. They're almost 2 eyes across. So, and these glasses are going to come into about here. So I see them come into here, into here. So I outline your features very lightly. Now the glasses that he has right here, see how the glasses come right almost, let's move this down. See how the glasses right here are just above that eyelid. So they're going to be like right here. And then to here. So let's go up here. There's a little bit of a curve. And then it comes across to here. Now, what I would like to do is do some of the shadows. You're going to see that there's some shadows right here where his eyebrow is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline those just to get an idea of where those shadows fall. So I'm going to use contour lines to outline those shapes. There's a lot of parallel lines, like the eyebrows are parallel, the bottom of the nose is parallel, the eyes are kind of on the same line. So what you're trying to do is set this up proportionally to get this set. The best way is if you take and just kind of made a line from tear duct to tear duct and put a pencil line there. Take a piece of paper or your pencil or something, measure from the middle of there right down to the bottom of the nose and make a mark. And then in between the tear ducts, right in the middle, you put a little dot and you measure to the edge of the white of the eye. Just see what that is. So the bottom of the nose seems to be from the middle between the eyes out to the white of the eyes on the side here, and you're going to see that that's about the same measurement. So come back to our drawing. Got this little light line kind of going between the eyes, and let's see, let's go from the middle of the eyes out to the edge of the white of the eyes is right there. Then let's pivot around and make a dot right at the bottom. And that kind of gives us the edge there. Now let me tell you something too about the nostrils. The nostrils usually line up with the edge of the eye. If you take your pencil and you look down here and you go, oh yeah, it's right there at the edge. You look over here and it's pretty close to where the tear duct is. So that's going to give us kind of an idea of how wide the nose is. So it's going to kind of come down to here and down to here. Now, I look at the shape of the bottom of the nose, and nostrils are not round, but you look for the shapes and you try to outline it. And that's what we're going to do. See how the bottom of his nose comes to here, but the edge of his nose is here and the nostril comes up. So that's what we're trying to do, is match that shape. And then there's a shadow on the edge of the nose right here, so let's get that in there. Okay, next I'm going to work with the mouth. Let me show you a few things here. Check to see where in your eyes the mouth comes. It looks like it's in the middle of the pupils, the edge of the mouth here, and pretty much the edge is right here. Now his mustache covers a little bit of the edge of his mouth. Now let's see what the distance is between the nose and the top of the lip. So it's going to be this distance right here. And what I'm going to do is measure in the eye to see. It's almost an eye width. So what I'm going to do is almost take this eye width and say, okay, so it's from here to here. It's going to be down, let me just check to make sure. Got this distance right here, or you can use my pencil and measure like this. And then I'm going to come down to about here. So let's go down to, it's going to be the top lip. It's going to come to over to here, over to here. And I look at his lip. Now remember how I did the eye. I look at the shape of the top of the eye when it was that and tried to match it. The top of the lip, there's a little fold sometimes that people have in the middle. Mr. King, his is not pronounced, so it's just going to come across here, and then his lip tilts a little bit like this. And one thing that I'm going to ask you to do is when you draw on the teeth, draw them in very lightly to begin with. If you start out really dark, it's going to look like they have professional spitting gaps, and you just have to be careful about that. So draw it in lightly. So the actual measurement is going to be pretty close in the picture from the middle of the eyes to the top lip. To the top lip, right down to here is going to be where the chin is going to be. So I see that his hair on his beard comes to about here, and that's going to be right here is that mark, and then about halfway, just a little bit above halfway, is this little part of his beard here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this area here to see how far over it is to the face. From the glasses, let's just say from this edge here to this wrinkle, let's see, it's going to be about an eye width. So let me see if I can get this. It's going to be about this far over. So it's going to be right about here. It's going to be the side of his face. And that comes down, and if you look right here, right below this area it starts to curve. There's a faint curve and it curves here. So let's get that. So right about here, it's going to start to curve. So now I'm at this point where I've drawn in the other side of the face. I've got this kind of proportioned out. And what I'm going to do now is measure to the top of this hairline right here. And let's see, that goes from there down to right about the bottom of this area right here. So let's just see what we've got here. So we're talking about that distance. I'm going to measure up here. This is where we're at so far. I started out measuring the eye, I measured across, and then I found out it's another eye's distance over to here, and I measured that one, drew these eyes in. Remember the shape of the eye. We're going to come back and start shading. Then I built the nose off that. I built the measurements from here down to the lip. I measured that from the picture, measured the width of the lips, and you'll notice that the edge of the nose kind of goes with the tear ducts like this, and this lines up somewhat with the pupils across from here. And then I started measuring the face using the measurements I already had according to the measurement of the picture. This is what you have to be careful of, is the corners or the chin line here, and you try to get that. It's very subtle, but try to get that. And the bottom of the chin, the shape of that, and then once you get that, measure to the top of the head to get that, and lightly draw this in. And now we're ready to start with the eye. Okay, what I'm going to do now is have you make a gradation chart. I'm going to give you a little piece of paper that's 5 inches long and 1 inch wide. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a ruler and you're going to measure right down the middle, put a dot on either end, here and here, right in the middle at 1/2 inch, and you're going to put a line straight across, and that every 1/2 inch you're going to make a line straight up and down. So by the time you get done, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have these. And then I'm going to want you to number them. 10 through 1. It's going to look like this. So once you get done, this is what it's going to look like. You've got 10 all the way down to 1, and you put your name in the end there. I want you to pick 10 and make it black, and so then you'll have number 10 done, which is black, and number 1 done, which is white. So now I have 10 done. And actually when I shaded it, I went about 3 or 4 different directions to really get that black. The next number I'm going to do is 5. And I'm going to lightly shade 5 and get it all the way up to here. And then I'm going to do 6 and go all the way up, 7 go all the way up, 8 go all the way up, 9 go to 10. So that you can see how these work together. Now 5 is going to be a medium gray in between white and 10. In between 1 and 10. Okay, here's what I did. I shaded 5, took it all the way on up, and now I'm going to do 6, take it all the way on up. And by the way, I kept my pencil pretty sharp, and when I'm shading, I keep the lines really close together. I don't shade on the side, but I tip my pencil up and use the point. But keep your lines close together so it doesn't look too rough at this point. There. Now what I did is I took 6 all the way on up darkened it, and then I took 7 all the way up and darkened it, 8 all the way up, then 9, and matched that. So I've got this real dark, dark gray, a little lighter dark gray, and then it goes up to 5, which is my middle. Now I'm going to take 2 and lightly, just try to get the difference between 2 and 1 is so light. So I'm going to hold my pencil way back here as I shade this one, and I'm going to finish up this gradation chart. Okay, here's my chart. So you can kind of see what I did. So I took 1, left it white, and then I took 2 all the way up to 5, and then 3 up, and then 4, so that you can see how it kind of gets darker as it goes up. And again, when I did the shading, I held way back here on those 2, 3s, and 4s, just so that I'd have very little pressure on it. Now I'd like to talk to you very quickly about shading. The first thing about shading is make sure that you keep your pencil point very sharp. This gives you a quality about your shading, because when it gets dull, it's going to start to get grainy, and it's going to start to lose its detail and its cleanness. So keep your pencil point sharp. The second thing is when you're shading, don't use your pencil flat on the paper, trying to get this edge to cover a lot of area real quick. I would have you take your time and use your pencil point more, and keep your lines close together for the most part. And as a general rule, shade in 4 directions, like sideways, up and down, and turn your board so that you can get those 4 directions. That's going to tie your picture in pretty well. And then the other thing too is use a smudge sheet a lot when you're drawing, so that keeps your hand from smudging your paper. Now the one thing that I find is when you're doing hair, you can't draw white, but you can draw the dark around it. So it's going to take a little extra time, but lightly shade around there, around the hairs, and then darken it up so that you get your white hairs and you get the highlights. And then you can come over at the end and then go different directions very lightly. And that's another thing, is when you start shading, shade light to begin with and darken as you go along. Unless it's the pupil of the eye, there you can go dark first, or if it's a real dark area, you can go dark first there. But generally speaking, if you start out light and build up your shades, then it has much more of a quality look about it. I want to give you a little demonstration of what it takes to go 4 directions. So if I start shading here and I start taking my pencil, and notice when I'm holding my pencil, I'm going to hold it back here to go light, and then I'm going to hold it up here to go darker. But as I'm shading here, I'm going to go light to begin with, and I start coming down here, and see how I'm keeping the pencil lines close together as a general rule. And then I go, okay, I want to go this direction, so I'm going to start over here and go this direction, and then I might come this direction too. And this is cross-hatching, but this gives you a nice evenness about this. And I might even come over this direction and come down here like this. But you can start to see how you can get some shading going. Then I could probably come back over here and maybe just lightly put another layer. And try it this way again. But this gives you a little bit more evenness about your shading. Now, let's take a look at Mr. King's eye. That eye is pretty dark. So the center, using my gradation chart, I'm going to look and say, okay, that's a black. And down here, the shades underneath, that looks like that's a 7 with a little bit of 6 in it. And then over in here, that's probably pretty dark too. So what we're going to do is we're going to shade this eye in using the gradation chart. We're trying to get as dark as the actual picture is. Make sure that you keep your pencil really sharp when working on these projects. I've also put a smudge sheet down so that I don't smudge with my hand, because it's going to have the tendency to do that. When I start with the eye, let's take this iris, let's take it to a 10. The pupil in the iris, that is. There's this little highlight. We're going to leave that out. We're going to get this dark to start with. Now, when I work on the iris, the outside of Mr. King's eye is actually going to be little lines coming out, and then it gets darker on the edge. And so I want you to put the detail into your eye as much as you can, because it's a series of little lines kind of coming like this to the center, all the way out, coming in. And you just keep building them up. This give more life. This will give more life to your eye than if you just shade it one solid color, because irises have a grain to them. Now let's start on the eyelid, and that's going to be a little bit darker. And notice the white of the eye is not absolutely white. So you've got to, if you look at Mr. King's eye, see how it's kind of gray in there? And we've got to get that. Although we do need to leave this white highlight underneath his eye. Now what I want to show you over here, even though you don't see it, are going to be hairs in the eyebrow. And the way you put those in are very lightly over top of your shading. See, I've got my shading done. And so we're going to put those in over top, because you get your shading in and then you're ready to do that. Eyebrows don't go up and down. If you look at eyebrows, they kind of come to the side and then they kind of turn in a little bit. But have your pencil sharp, and you can put them over top. So here's where I'm at this point. I did the shading on both eyes. This one looks like it's turning out just a little bit, but we'll see where it ends up. But you can see how I did shading, and it probably still take them darker yet. But I'm going to start working on the nose next. Next, I would like to work on the nose. What's going to happen is you take a look at this nose and you find out what shade is that. Okay, it looks like it's about a 5 in some of these areas here, maybe a 2. Yeah, a 2 right in here. That highlight might be a 1, between a 1 and a 2. Then down below the nose, it's going to be pretty dark. And so we're going to try to work on this nose using this chart and then figuring out, okay, that's going to be pretty dark in there. I'm going to try to match the shapes, the shading. Keep your lines close together on your shading. There's a sheet on noses. Take a look at this just to show you the shape of different noses, and the it's got everything from looking up the nose to the side of the nose to front on. But take a look at this to see how the shading works in this picture. Now let's go back to the drawing. So shading those, again, keep your pencil lines close together, use your smudge sheet, and try to match those shades. Next, I'd like to work with the lip area. And because the mustache covers this lip area, I'm going to start working with hair too. On your sheets, there's a sheet that says mouths. You can take a look at this to see just some of the different ideas of how lips are created and drawn. And there's no mustaches on here. But the thing that happens with the mustache is that there's white hairs or there's lighter hairs, so you have to leave those in there and kind of draw around them to get those in there. And you're going to see that happening as I draw on Mr. King's face here. Also, if you'll notice the different directions I've been going, it's like lightly shading and cross-hatching at the same time. Try that technique as you're putting your face together. What I'd like to work on now is going to be the ears. And as I look at Mr. King's ears, look at the shapes, look at the shading. But don't think of an ear as you might use a symbol or something like this, but think of an ear for the shapes. It's kind of got these dark shades in here and it's got these light spots. I'm going to try to match those according to what I have here. Now the beard is very similar to what I did with the mustache. Mr. King's beard, you can see these white hairs. Remember, you can't draw white, so you've got to kind of go around it. And that's what I'm going to work on, is kind of get these white hairs in there. Then put the darker, or the grays and the darker hairs behind it to give it depth. Okay, now I'm going to work on the cloth over here and then over here so you can see what's going on. Now we're ready to begin the hair. As you look at the hair, look for the light areas and the dark areas. Remember that you can't draw the white areas in, so you have to shade around them. And shade the direction that the hair is going. Start out lightly, outline the hairs, keep that direction going, and at the end you can shade different directions just to darken it if you need to. But remember to put those light areas in and shade the direction that the hair is going. I'm going to start by putting the shade on his forehead and then put the hairs in. Also remember, keep your pencil sharp through this process. So now what I'm going to do is work on this little area right up in here. As you can see, there's crisscrossing hairs, and we're going to try to capture that, remembering that you can't draw the white, but you've got to draw what's behind it. Keep your pencil going in the direction that the hairs are going in. So let's work on this area here now.